Question. I want to awaken, I don't want to do anything. Well, let me know how that works out for you. And the reason why I'm commenting on it is that this short comment, it really sort of encapsulates what I've seen over the many years I've been on the spiritual path, that it's the difference between what I call the outer path and the inner path. And the outer path is where you think there is some automatic way to reach the goal, some shortcut. And the inner path is where you realize that the spiritual path is a process, a gradual process that goes through many different stages. And I know that there are some teachings from the East, and there are some modern non-dual teachers who would dispute this and say, oh, that's the old-fashioned approach. That's a limited approach. Because when it comes to awakening, you just need to shift the mind and then you're instantly awakened. And I have talked about this in some of my non-duality videos, but I still wanted to comment on it here, because if you think you can instantly awaken, what would be the purpose of this? What will you get out of an instant awakening? Because the concept is you are not awakened now. So how did you get into the unawakened state? Usually they can't explain that. It's just some kind of accident or something that happened. And then you just need to realize that everything that you experience in this unawakened state is a dream. It's unreal. It's an illusion. And then you instantly awaken from the dream. And now, just like when you wake up in the morning, instead of dreaming, you are awake. And then it's whatever it is, ever after, happily ever after, or whatever. But what would be the purpose of it? And as I've explained over and over again, including in my video about how the world was created, the purpose of the entire world of form is to be a learning environment whereby we can expand our sense of self. And we expand our sense of self in stages. It's not the purpose to do it all at once. You understand? It's like this old, I think it's a Buddhist concept. It's not the destination, it's the journey. So, the purpose is we start out with a limited point-like sense of self, and we gradually expand it. And by gradually expanding it, it becomes real for us. We are living it, we are embodying it, we are internalizing it. So you could say, here's the starting point, here's the ending point of the journey. From a certain perspective, you could say, oh yeah, well, the goal is to get to the ending point. Yeah, it is in a sense. But the purpose really is the gradual journey that takes you to the ending point, because you actually couldn't get to the ending point instantly. You couldn't shift instantly from down there to up there, because then you wouldn't grow in awareness. It's by going through all of the steps that you grow in awareness and shift your perspective. So, I know there are teachings out there who will dispute this, and I understand it. I understand that every concept that we are given about spirituality can become a closed doctrine that actually hinders our growth. So even the concept of a spiritual path can, at a certain stage, become a hindrance, because it implies we are here, we are supposed to be there, but we are not there yet. So it can reinforce a sense of distance between where you are and where you should be. and you can keep, it's like you are moving the goalpost. You are keep pushing it so you never arrive. This is very valid at a certain higher stage of the path. There comes a certain point of the path where you have to discard the concept of a path and make an instant shift to a high level of awareness. Incidentally, when you make that shift, you see that there are also higher levels, and you then go gradually again. But nevertheless, it is valid at a certain point to make an instant shift, but it's just not to an ultimate state of consciousness. So the concept of a path is also very valid for the biggest part of the journey, because when you are at the lower levels of awareness, you can't make an instant shift and be enlightened. That's why you can have, let's say, I'm not disputing that there are certain people who, at a certain age, they had this supposedly spontaneous awakening. I dispute that it's completely spontaneous. They were going through some process in their minds, but nevertheless. So let's say there's somebody who has a spontaneous awakening, and he doesn't remember what he's done in past lives to raise his consciousness. So now he goes out and tells everybody, oh, just shift your mind and you can awaken. But the majority of the people who hear this haven't gone through the same process in past lives that the guru did. So they can't awaken, and therefore their teaching is useless for them. And it's in fact dangerous, or it's a slap in the face, because he's telling them, oh, just do it. But they can't. You cannot jump 10 stories up in a building. You have to find the stairs and walk one step at a time. So for most people, the concept of a spiritual path, gradual path, is perfectly valid. And as I said, the whole purpose is to walk gradually, because for each step you take up, you expand your sense of self. So there are people who also say, well, you can't do anything to awaken. And again, there's a validity to that statement, because you cannot create a spiritual academy that has let's say it's a one-year program. You start, anybody who walks in and completes the one-year program is going to be awakened in the end. You can't do that. You can't force it. But neither can it happen spontaneously until you are at a certain level of the spiritual path and have gone through a certain process to get there. And so you can say, as the person says, I want to awaken, I don't want to do anything. There are teachers who say, yes, but you can't do anything to awaken. You don't have to do anything, you have to shift. And again, it's both valid and not valid, because yes, when you are at a certain level of the path, in order to awaken, there's nothing outer you can do. You just have to shift your consciousness. And it does happen seemingly spontaneously, in the sense that you can't, with the linear intellectual mind, you can't set up a process that will take you there automatically. But until you are at that point, you have to do something to take each of these steps up. Because it's by doing this and taking these gradual steps that you raise your awareness, expand your sense of self. And again, if you jumped from the starting point to the finishing point in one giant leap, you wouldn't expand your sense of self. Let's just say there's an observation tower. It has 144 steps to the top. So now you have two people. Start at the bottom. One of them walks the steps up, and for each step there's a certain riddle that he has to solve, a certain task he has to complete. So he goes to the first step, he works on this riddle, this task, he solves it, he goes up, and then he keeps going. So for each step he takes up, he's expanding his sense of who we are, his abilities, his cognitive abilities, his ability to solve these puzzles, and he becomes more confident and expands his sense of self. So when he arrives at the top, he can look back at all this process, and he has internalized all of this that he experienced on the path. And he now has a much broader sense of self than when he started. So even though he is looking out from the top of the tower and can see the view, he has a great sense of It means something, it has accomplishment because he took all these steps, and he has a sense that he's arrived there, and he's done something. So now there's the other person, and him, you give a sleeping pill, and he falls asleep, and then they carry him up the stairs, and then when he wakes up, he's at the top. Well, how is his consciousness different than from when he fell asleep at the bottom? He didn't do anything to get to the top. What has he achieved? What has he internalized? How has he expanded his ability to solve life's riddles? How has he expanded his sense of who he is, what he can do, what he wants to do in the world? Nothing. He's the same person he was at the bottom. So what good does it do him that he can see the view? He can't do anything with it. So this whole idea, and that's really the reason I wanted to comment on it. I want to awaken, I don't want to do anything. This is the ego's wet dream. I can achieve something without doing anything for it. I mean, it's just completely unrealistic. You could say, people who have this attitude, well, why do you want to awaken? What do you think this is going to do for you? What do you think awakening is? Well, it's some ultimate state. Well, that's also the ego's wet dream, to reach some ultimate state. Without doing anything to get there. But it's by doing something to get there that you raise your awareness. I mean, it's not the destination, it's the journey, because it's not you reaching a higher level of awareness without expanding your sense of self through all the different steps. That's not what matters. It is expanding your sense of self that matters, and that only happens when you take all of these steps. Anyway, I know this is a very persistent illusion, perpetuated by some spiritual teachers and many spiritual students. Very, very persistent. I'm not sure that anybody could say anything that would puncture these people's bubble and awaken them from the dream of instant awakening. But anyway, I tried.